Hello everyone, it's Kay here and I'm here today to follow up on a video that I shared when I did the foxglove loaded envelope using Artie Maze's digital kit. Several people asked about the envelope that was actually inside the loaded envelope, if that makes sense, and I did say that I would come back and share how to make them. It is a very simple process and suits all sizes of envelopes. Clearly, if you have a good stash of craft coloured envelopes, it saves an awful lot of work. But if all you have is white or cream, then you know it's the same difference really. And all you need to set out are two envelopes that are the same size. Basically, it doesn't matter what size they are. They can be quite large, as I did in the loaded envelope, right down to this size of envelope, which is the 3.5 by 3.5. And all you have to do primarily is put your envelope onto your cutter and then take a slither of paper off the edge of the envelope to allow it to open out fully like this. And both of them need to be treated in exactly the same way. So I'm doing both sizes just so that you can see what I mean, and then I will bring in another size at the end if you don't quite remember what it is I shared, and I wouldn't blame you because we all watch so much on YouTube. But this is the first envelope opened. Both sides have been cut a slither from, and this is the second envelope. And what I'm going to do is turn them and turn them so each one is face down on my mat. I am then going to bring back the bottom envelope to the gummed side and just gently put a bead of glue over that area. That then is turned back over and you line it up with the envelope that is already on your work surface. And in doing that, you've actually, oops, if it stays where you want it to be, I've just put on quite a bit of glue, I think there, probably more than I actually need, but a little bit of wiggle room is not a bad thing. I mean, you can attach from this side as well, but to get it nicely lined up so it's a lovely even flow, it is easier to work on what will be the outside aspect of the envelope. And then you are left with this rather elongated double envelope scenario. So I'll just put that out of the way, do exactly the same thing to the smaller envelope. I'm sorry it's white, but hopefully you can see what I'm doing. I turn that over onto its tummy, take the glued tab, which would be your envelope closure, on the other envelope and put your bead of glue on it, bearing in mind you've already cut that little slither of paper off, and then line up with the seam to the edge of your envelope. You don't want any overlapping, you don't want anything that will interfere with the folds of the envelope, basically. I always use Yoo-hoo. You can use whatever glue suits you. You need something that's quite strong, because apart from what you decorate the envelope with, that is the only glue that is holding your envelope scenario together. You then bring in your cutter, and I'm hoping you can see it's the bottom end with the forked edge on it, take to your cutter, bring it down and just trim it off like so. So you are then left with 3 clear windows to work in and your flap edge. At this point it's a good idea to fold up the envelope, because sometimes you do need to do a little bit of extra trimming just to make sure that everything lines up nicely. And that is all there is to that part of the project. I'm just going to trim that down because I can see one of the envelopes I didn't trim so very well when I was cutting off the slithers, and you do want those edges to be nice and tidy. Looks like I've done exactly the same thing on the other side, but I don't quite trust myself to cut 2 envelopes together. You don't want to take off too much, clearly. You just want enough to give you that free-flowing scenario that isn't affected by the... Excuse the dogs, they're playing, having a funny 5 minutes. I'm also going to take a slither off that end again, just to make sure that it fits into the fold without crossing over the lines of the envelope creases. And what you end up with is that. Same again on the little one, just to prove it can be done. I'm going to trim off that bottom edge like so, and then fold it up and make sure that it all sits together quite nicely. Now you can see I've got a little buckle there, so all that means is I need to go back to the edge that I've just cut the peaked edge off and take off another centimetre perhaps. Nothing too much, don't overdo it, because you do want it all to sit nicely together. And it seems I've done the same thing again. I've not trimmed it as nicely as it needs to be, but to go back in and just trim off the offending edges is no biggie. The idea is to have a nice free-flowing fold again with no interruptions, and something that will lend itself to being decorated in the fullness of time. This is a flat project, so it does mean that you can make up a lot of these bases, keep them to one side, and then just use them as and when you need them. At this point they don't look very interesting, I have to say, but it's a means to an end. So I'll put that back there, get rid of the cutter because we really don't need that any longer. And what we have to do next is mark up our flap area. And what you do is get a ruler. If you use, I'm terrible, it's got to be inches for me, but do whatever is comfortable for you. And what I tend to do is put an inch marker. I'm looking for a pencil now. Oh, there's one. You want an inch marker for safety in the centre, roughly speaking, of that flap. And what I do then is take it up by approximately ½ an inch. Wait a minute, one. Yeah. So what I've got now, I started measuring at 1 inch. I've now taken the ruler up until I've got approximately 1½ or ½ an inch either side of that one. If I bring it down a bit, hopefully you'll be able to see. Yeah, so there's the edge of the envelope and there's the edge of the envelope. And what I want to do then is take that out to the full inch. You don't need to draw on the flap of the envelope, because once that flap lifts up, you can marry up those lines quite effectively. And then what we need to do with a cutting mat, let's move this one out of the way because I've got all of that underneath here, and your most favourite blade, whatever that may be, and you cut through this area, because this becomes the flap that allows the aperture that allows the flap of the envelope to pass down through, and I'll show you that now. If you fold it up, fold it, bring the flap over, and then tuck that inside. It doesn't matter that you've marked the paper in any way, because clearly this will be inked and decorated to make it fit for purpose. So I'll show you again on the larger one. There are your 3 layers. You fold in, fold again, bring your top flap over. So you're ending up with that scenario. And again, it's the measuring of the little aperture that you need to make. So your ruler, find an inch, any inch, set it off at the peak. Let's just move this back so I'm not in, it's on the screen. I'm using 2 inches this time, and it just works out exactly the same. So that's at 2 inches. Now I'm going to slide that up, and because it's a larger envelope, I'm going to go for 3/4 of an inch either side of the envelope line, and then I'm going to take that out to another 1/2 inch. The 1/2 inch seems to give enough clearance to let the flap sit in quite nicely. You then open it all up again and cut through with your blade, and this time you are going the length of the line across the whole of the area from one end of the line to the other. Now, one cut will suffice, but if you're planning to heavily decorate your flip envelope, then you will want to make that area thicker so that you can put your embossed edge through or decorated edge through. That's not quite cut there, so just go back in again. And I have opened that up a little bit wider. So to do the fold again, 1, 2 and 3, and pop the top of your envelope in. Now if you wanted to, you could Velcro, you could put some lace across there on the outside of the envelope. It's entirely up to you. But when it comes to actually decorating your envelope, you need to decorate one side, open it up, make that cut again so that you've gone through your designer paper, then decorate this side, turn it over, so because if you do it this way, you'll always have that cutting line to go back to, and then you cut through. So by the time you've actually decorated and done everything you need to do, that slot remains visible and you can use it with security, knowing that it's going to not interfere with any decoration that you've done on the page. The other thing to remember with this area is when you're decorating this page, you need to work around that aperture. You don't want to put anything over that cut edge, because clearly if you do, it's going to affect the closure of the actual envelope. So you do, with that particular page, both sides need to be aware that that has to be left free to tuck the top of your envelope into it. There's nothing to stop you adding perhaps a little decoration at either end of the cut to hide, it is a little bit raw, to hide the ends here. I did do that on one, and I just put a couple of tiny little bows either side so as not to interrupt the opening and closing mechanism of the envelope. But that really is all there is to it. It is very, very straightforward. But if I bring this back on, I'll leave those two there as two very different sizes, widen out again, and this is larger than a C6, I believe. This is 6¼ by 4½, just over. And all I've done then, I did exactly the same process, and then I've just decorated it with some lovely papers. Now this is leftovers from the loaded envelope kit that I did for Artie Mays, and I have done the little bit of embellishing around the edges with pearlized paint, purely because I like it. And then you turn it over and you've got the outside aspect of the envelope. You see what I mean about the cut. I didn't actually cut this side. I think because I've collaged a little bit and put a sheet over it, it has allowed me, by luck, not by design, I have to say, to utilise the area that was cut on the first cut, and I don't know how lucky that was, in all honesty. But once you fold up your envelope, clearly this could still take a great deal of embellishments and wordage and sentiments, that kind of thing, but as it stands currently, it is a very, very attractive thing to add to a journal. You could make a birthday card with it. It could be an anniversary card, anything that you wanted it to be. It is a very, very versatile project, and I have to say, because I like gluing and sticking and folding and all the rest of it, it lends itself beautifully to digital papers. You could go ahead with your book paper and that kind of thing, and decorate it to where you want it to be. But there are 3 different sizes there, and I have done a larger one again, and all of them I think are just lovely additions to whatever main project you feel you'd like to use it on. So I hope you found this inspiring. I will link the lady that I found this tutorial on below, and her name is Crafty Cat, and she does an awful lot of paper projects like this, tags, more uses with envelopes. I mean, there is so much out there, but as this is the lady that shared how to make the envelope, although she doesn't go into the slit for the flap, I think the video must run out by then. It is a super project, and I hope you feel inspired enough to go along and give it a try. So thank you very much for sharing this time with me. Take care everyone, happy crafting.